Welcome to Alan Skorsky Reports. I'm Alan Skorsky. June 24th will go down in history as the day that New York City, the Big Apple, experienced a political earthquake never seen before. A 33-year-old Zohran Mamdani, the zero with zero government experience, shook the city and beyond to its core by winning the Democrat nomination for New York City. A young man whose ideology is the furthest to the left that we have ever witnessed. Not only is he a virulent antisemite in a city that has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, but his platform goes against everything New York City is about, from promising rent control to opening government-run grocery stores to promising free buses, free childcare, strengthening New York City's status as a sanctuary city, and defunding the police. All of these issues and more will be paid for, according to Mamdani, by raising taxes on billionaires whom he said shouldn't exist. He was the founder of the anti-Semitic group Students for Justice in Palestine while attending Bowdoin College. He has refused to denounce Globalize the Intifada, which is a call for violence against the Jews worldwide. He supports the BDS movement to delegitimize the state of Israel and even vowed, though he has no standing, to have Israel's prime minister arrested when he comes to New York. And lest anyone think that he is the typical leftist who is rebellious against his parents, his father is a professor at Columbia University who believes that suicide bombers are legitimate war of weapon and they are soldiers, not terrorists. Mamdani has also said he would appoint former disgraced anti-Semitic Congressman Jamal Bowman as his Chancellor of Education. As of this broadcast, there are three candidates challenging Mamdani to be the mayor. Andrew Cuomo, the former disgraced governor who was forced to resign over sexual harassment allegations, current Mayor Eric Adams, who is running as an independent, and Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa. The problem is, if two of them don't withdraw their candidacies, Mamdani is all but guaranteed victory this November. With us today is one of the premier Democratic pollsters and consultants, Dr. Hank Sheinkopf, who was recently featured in a Wall Street Journal article titled, "Can Anyone Stop Zohran Mamdani?" Dr. Sheinkopf has worked on an estimated 700 political, domestic, and international political campaigns, and is currently maintaining his public relations and crisis management practice. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm very grateful to be with you, and I'm very flattered that you would invite me to your program.
Well, thank you for joining. Listen, I wanted the best at a time when we needed the best. So there was just so much to unravel here. As we spoke off the air, I moved to New York when David Dinkins had become mayor,
Sure.
and things thought things would be terrible. They were. And then Rudy Giuliani was mayor for 2 terms, Mike Bloomberg for 3 terms, and then we had Bill de Blasio, and things have
Sure.
kind of gone awry since then with the city council, going down the tubes. Now we've got a candidate who just earthquake. He's not a Democrat by any stretch of the imagination. He is a Democratic socialist, an admitted Democratic socialist. So just to get started here, tell us, how did New York, which is, again, it's a blue city, we know that, but how did it go from being a blue, moderately Democratic city to right now what is easily, by all estimates, the most dangerous type of candidate we could have ever imagined anywhere, let alone in a place like New York City?
Well, again, that's a very complicated question to answer. First of all, let's put things in some context. He's not a Democrat; he's a socialist. He is a socialist who, with his minions, is trying to hijack a bankrupt Democratic Party that now stands for nothing. Meets every 2 to 4 years, depending upon which state you're in, to come up with candidates, but has nothing else to say, and is a group of clans who have no entirely tying argument. There's nothing that binds it anymore. It's not about workers' rights or protecting people's ability to unionize or protecting, wages and benefits. And, the labor unions in this country created the weekend. They created the 40-hour work week. They created the benefits that we're used to having, the pensions. They're not about anything about that. They're about a small group of people, generally young, who don't like those in power, who don't believe in the normal course of events, which is that people rise up, but who somehow believe they're entitled to take over the world They have never paid a price, never borne a burden, never had a tough day. They're the most pampered generation in history, regardless of where they come from. They have done no volunteer work. And we know this because the voluntary organizations that tend to keep the civic society going are dying, and they're not participating. Masons, Rotarians, Lions, Elks, fraternal organizations that do charitable work, they're dying because these young people do not participate. They believe that they are owed, and that's their ethos. So what is the best way to find that? To find somebody who's never had a tough job, never worked very hard, one with two silver spoons in his mouth, who comes from a family whose housing was subsidized by the taxpayers because Columbia pays no taxes and the father is on the faculty. A mother who has decided that Gal Gadot should not appear at the Academy Awards. I guess that must have been because she was not wearing a blue dress. No, because she's a Jew. And you have this blatant anti-Semitism, which is part of this new way of thinking, kind of encased in this social justice argument. And, the Jews are finished in New York. The only question is or Jewish New York is finished is a better way to say it. The only question is when do the lights get turned out because the party is over?
So there are so many things that you said now, which leads me to like a half a dozen other questions.
Sure.
New York, for all of its flaws, used to be, especially me coming from Detroit, one of the most exciting cities to visit. It's the financial capital, the business capital, the sports capital, entertainment capital, tourist capital. All of these things are not going to exist anymore because he's going to kill every single aspect of it.
Well, they won't exist as we know them. The financial community has already started to leave. The financial community started leaving some years ago. Bernstein, for example, Alliance Bernstein shifted jobs to Nashville, I guess, a decade ago. 1,000 jobs here, 1,000 jobs there. Back office work is not done in New York anymore. It's done either online or in the Dallas-Fort Worth corridor, where their taxes are low, business is respected, crime is dealt with seriously, and it's just a better place to live for people. You can buy housing at cheaper cost.
Right.
New York has become a thing of the past. And the one thing about the wonderfulness of the Mike Bloomberg years is that he found something new to invent it. He restored New York at a time when the rest of the world thought it was over after 9/11, gave people confidence in the city, gave the financial community confidence, the business community confidence. What Bill de Blasio did was take the confidence out of the city.
Right.
It absolutely destroy and demoralize the police department, which was the greatest in the world. So much so that cops have never stopped blaming him yet for the fact that two of their members were assassinated not too long after de Blasio took office because they believe his rhetoric changed the discussion. Mamdani and the supporters of people who have been proponents of the defund the police movement. They believe in ending the carceral state, as they call it, which is closing and opening jails, setting people free. They believe in new bureaucratization. And frankly, when you do that, you create community-based organizations that are not subject to collective bargaining nor part of normative collective bargaining or employee relations in urban centers and cities. So what people don't understand is that everything we think the Jews have been part of in New York City is about to come to conclusion. Small businesses will be taxed out of existence. And we've been out of the small business for a while. And I think I blame part of this on our incessantly stupidness, which is, I think it was Tom Segev wrote the book, the Israeli author, on Jews. I don't remember what the title was, about the Jews in Germany, how they thought they would fit in, they would go to schools, they would be accepted, they could convert even to Christianity and somehow people would love them. Well, if you look at the idiots working for Mamdani who are Jews and the fools like Jerry Nadler, who really should be tossed out of office immediately, and it should have been gone a long time ago. He's outlived his usefulness as a public official. What they're doing is they are making the crazy claim that somehow we can live with abomination. Now, as I explained to someone yesterday, I said, look, the reality is that the people that are with Mamdani are not talking about taking Italy apart. They're not talking about killing Italians. They do not. I said, globalizing the Intifada means blowing up buses with people on them. That's the Intifada. Killing people who were celebrating religious observances like the Passover Seder. Shooting Jews in the street. That's what that means. I said, they're not talking about you. They're talking about me, which means that if you're not with us, you're against us. And the stupid American Jews need to understand it. So what are the kids doing? We've failed them because we've substituted for the name Hashem, we've substituted the names Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Cornell. very much akin to whatever the German equivalent was, the European equivalent would be of those universities in Europe, where we thought we would just fit in and everything would be fine. The problem is we don't fit in. It has less to do with Israel than it has to do with the attack on the West, an attack on everything that Judaism stands for and that Jewish law created for the world, which is due process, protection of women's rights. Rape is more common, not in Israel, certainly, but in the Arab countries and in places where it's used as a weapon of war. We don't do that. They do. Right. I mean, this is all nonsense. Western values are a function, and I think I'm not the only one to say this. Scholars have talked about this. Western values, Douglas Murray's talked about this, and many others have, are a function of the Judaic ideals. And this is now about to be gone by the wayside. Now, they may lie about it. Respect for adults, seniors, or older people's wisdom is part of our culture. What Mamdani and AOC and others are talking about is degentrifying. What they call it? What was the word they used? I'm trying to think of the term they use for bringing the party into the hands of youth.
Right.
Degentrifying. Degentrifying was the term they used. They're not talking about people in Iowa. They're talking about us. And that's just where it is. I mean, you have to pay attention to these words. Words matter.
Yeah. So, again, there are two things now I come across. You mentioned the unions, because I'm reading that they're getting union support. Leaving the Jews out of all of this now, just if you're a union person and that's your only issue, they have fought for decades. I remember when Governor Pataki, in his third term, I think he gave the unions whatever they wanted, and that kind of hurt the Republican brand in New York for a while. But do they not understand that all their benefits, their pensions, I know people who live in Israel now, and they're living off their pensions. All of that's going to be gone because they're not going to have a tax base here anymore. New York City pays, I think, the bulk of the taxes for the state. All those benefits come from taxpayers. Now, you're going to chase the taxpayers out of New York, you're going to have nothing. So all you union guys who think you're so smart by backing a socialist, when he drives your benefactors out of the state, you're going to have nothing left. You're not going to have, forget about having a Cadillac insurance. You're not even going to have a Pinto insurance. You're not going to be able ever to retire. Your pensions are going to be wiped out. Those are the unions. And then you have the Jews. I'm leaving out the leftists. I'm leaving out the Jewish Voice for Peace. I just read, I think it was last week, that modern Orthodox rabbis in New York City, I don't know who they are, but they want to meet with Mamdani because he's probably going to be the mayor. They're already throwing the towel in. And we want to just talk to him and see, if he can understand where we're coming. I'm thinking, what is it that you want him to understand? What do you think you're going to convince him of? And it's mind-boggling to me when you hear Schumer and Adler. We spoke to him, or this Mika Lasher, who's an assemblyman from Queens. I think I spoke to him. I know you spoke to him. How nice. You spoke to him. Donald Trump had dinner with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes like 2 years ago. And even the ZOA called him out on it, said, no, you don't talk to these people. And this is what's happening now. The dumbest of our people are legitimizing this guy when everything he says is about delegitimizing us.
Well, part of the social justice argument that's repelling the young people, again, who we have done this. I mean, not my children, maybe not yours. I don't know you, but my children are not like that. We've told children that it's okay to not be Jewish. We've told them to have we told them that they can have the Judaism of a Brad Lander, who's the city controller,
right?
Which is being hugged by Linda Sarsour, who's a stone cold Jew hater, and someone who destroyed the state of Israel tomorrow morning, and having her call him her mensch. Brad Lander Judaism is talking about being a liberal Zionist, which means nothing. Right. Brad Lander Judaism is about knowing nothing about halacha or the gifts of the Jews to the world, but engaging in some kind of boorish religion called Tikkun Olam, which is just a pasuk from, I guess, the Navi Micha. But the notion of justice that we find is one of ensuring that justice is maintained. And the Devarim, right? It says, what does it say? It says, shoftim, you will appoint, right? Judges and marshals. Why? Not to be brutal in law enforcement, but to make sure that society is kept in order. That's not what all this nonsense stands for. It stands for something else. And essentially, it is the acts of children who have, again, done nothing, have nothing but what their parents have given them, who are more worried about how much money they can make on a particular day to do who knows what with who knows whom at no cost to themselves. It's tragic.
Right. And here's also what is very, very scary, just to get an understanding about this. He's not running for mayor of South Bend, Indiana, or some little yokel place. He's running to be mayor of the most diverse and complex city in America, and a victory for him in a city with the largest Jewish population is going to be a major victory for the Islamists and the Palestinianists who chant death to America and death to Israel. Because if you can win in a city like New York City,
Yeah.
with so many Jews, with so many shuls, with so many yeshivas, with so many kosher restaurants, then it's over, and it's going to embolden them like they're fearless anyhow. I mean, they're not afraid of the police. They attack the police. They light those gas cans while they're blocking the traffic to
Sure.
JFK. So they're not afraid anyhow. But this is going to give them more boldness on steroids. And
Well,
there was something here that I read. I got this from memory, and this
sure.
came from the American Islamic scholar Tom Ficini. I think he's an imam in a masjid in New York State. He said that in the past mayoral races, all candidates were evil and in the pocket of AIPAC, whereas Mamdani has shown he is willing to sacrifice for Palestine. But Cheney added that having Mamdani in office would remove certain threats that are very important and strategic to the Muslim community. So while we have to be so careful to not even talk about his identity, it's not that he's a Muslim, it's that he's an Islamist with a radical agenda. And groups like CARE have been planning for this for 20 and 30 years. I recently saw a YouTube video, which of course I can't find now, Niwad, whatever it is, from CARE.
Yep.
He projected 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years where things are going to be. How many Islamists are going to have in Congress? How many they're going to have on school boards? How many they're going to have in the newsrooms? How many they're going to have journalists? And this right here is all part of the plan.
Right.
So anyone who thinks that, oh, well, you know what? Listen, I'm the kind of guy who said when Obama won, oh, well, God has a plan. God always has a plan, but this one's got much more dire consequences. Obama's victory wasn't really a writing on the wall. He was a good candidate at the right time. For Mamdani to win, this means it's gonna have ramifications all across the globe.
Absolutely accurate. Look, Jewish people in Israel have saved the world 3 times that I can recall in recent memory. One was the bombing of the reactor in Iraq. 2 was the bombing of the reactor in Syria. The 3rd was the bombing of the reactor, the uranium plant and the nuclear plants that Iran had put together. And logic dictates that if they were pretty close, which meant that the bomb would go into Europe, not necessarily into Israel, because the desire is to spread jihad and to reestablish the caliphate. This time under Shia law, not the Sunni law in Europe. The history tells us that we should be paying more careful attention. And our children, again, they have paid no price and borne no burden. What do they know?
Right.
The fact is that the last time vicious attacks were undertaken against Jews in the world, the result was that 100 million people died. The fact is that from the first pogrom in Europe until 1945, Europe overall sought not, this was in the early part of this would be the 1920s, but before the turn of the 20th century, right after the turn of no, it would be the 10th century actually. Europe saw no peace until 1945. What do they think is going to happen?
Right.
It is a lack of history and a lack of understanding of how things occur, and it also will reshape the balance of power in the world. How so? If New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago are under the control of a whole new world that is not related to reality, Trump will run likely for 3rd term, I would bet, because this country will be in chaos,
right.
And he will win running against those 3 cities. I mean, it's just fascinating. And New York will. Mamdani will be the best thing that ever happened to Florida and probably Texas and Nevada and Arizona, because that skill, that wealth, and that experience will now be taken outside the country. As to your comments about the unions, collective bargaining agreements are in place. The city has gone bankrupt before, and who knows what will occur. But the Mamdani is not the friend of the unions; they are delusional. He will be the worst negotiating partner because he's going to take apart their very jobs by giving them to nonprofits, which is a way to ensure that the costs increase, that the collective bargaining agreements are violated, and that non-union workers are in place. I mean, we're going to see a very different New York. And as the Jews leave, they take their gifts with them, which means that this will look a lot more like Newark or Detroit than it will the New York that we know. It's only a matter of time. You cannot have the middle class, the functioning business community, and others leave and expect the city to function.
Let me ask you a question. Turning now to the campaign, okay? Cuomo, again, whatever it is, if he can win now, God bless him. I'll shake his hand. He ran a miserable campaign. Again, I'm in Long Island, so I didn't see all the campaign ads being run, but I heard him. His criticism of Mamdani was that I'll go visit Israel. He won't go visit Israel. I'm thinking that's how you're pandering for the Jewish vote by saying you're going to go and visit Israel. Look what's
Yeah.
happening to Jews getting beat up in the streets on college campuses. If you're going to pander to me, at least do it with a half a brain. I don't need Mamdani to go visit Israel. I need him to protect the Jews here, which of course he's not going to do. But now, and you said in this article in the Wall Street Journal that you were gonna they think that Eric Adams, he's your guy, but we've got to get to work for him. Again, if it's Cuomo, Sliwa, Adams, I'm all for any of them. But one of the things that I read is that Adams is like, I think in a poll, for whatever you think about polls, is he had like a 62% negative or unfavorability. That's huge. So my question is this. I know that some guys like Bill Ackman, Jamie Dimon, they're going to put their money where their mouths are. I don't know
Right.
how many other guys are going to do it. But if there's not a coordinated effort, it'll just be like throwing money to the wind, as they say. There has to be a concentrated effort of what Mamdani means to New York and the rest of the state.
Right.
To me, and again, Cuomo's ego is insane. He lost once. Now he's coming back into the race. Curtis, God bless him. He got clobbered by Adams last time, and Adams didn't even have to break a sweat doing it. So, in your opinion, who, why, and how do you think can happen, assuming that the real race begins after Labor Day?
First of all, there's always some insane thing that occurs in New York that changes the outcome of a mayor election. It's just the way it is. In de Blasio versus Bill Thompson, that primary in 2013, it was de Blasio putting his son up on the screen talking about the cops.
Yeah.
And it's something insane that has nothing to do with anything. 9/11, Mark Green was going to be the mayor. 9/11 reinvented Rudy Giuliani, who had a 32% reelect on 9/10/2001, was going no place, was a severely disliked figure. And that endorsement of Rudy Giuliani, who became America's mayor as a function of that tragedy, helped elect Mike Bloomberg. I mean, there's always something insane that happens. But there's a Jewish argument, too, that is halachically based, which is called Hakeres Hatov. For example, when you see an Albanian, you should say thank you, because they and the Bulgarians were essentially the only people who did not give us up. The Bulgarians were not as good as the Albanians, but they were better than anybody else. But the Albanians were almost 100% of the mark. We say thank you because we owe. And the Torah is very clear. Halacha tells us that we have an obligation to thank people who do that every day of our lives. Adam stood up for us when it was inconvenient and paid a price for it. I think that we have an obligation to stand up for him. It's the right to, it's not by the wind. I can say that as a rabbi, we have that obligation, number one. Number two, the others, I think, will ultimately fall apart. I don't think Sliwa gets there, although he's a decent fellow. Certainly, if he cracks 15, I'd be shocked. I think Cuomo has already proven his incapacity to get numbers, and he keeps going to the same pollsters who keep telling him the same things because they make him feel good. When in fact, they were wrong. They didn't target properly. The data was inconsequential, and he got killed. He didn't get killed by young people. He got killed by women around the city who voted. Why? Because they don't have amnesia. On questions of law and order and chaos, people will likely be reminded next few weeks by candidates running against Andrew Cuomo that his parole board as governor freed 24 cop killers. I mean, these are serious phenomena. I think Adams will rise from the dead like the phoenix, and I think that it will be an interesting race to watch. He has what to run on. The city has improved, not declined, under his leadership in the last couple of years.
Right.
But we have to think clearly about what the future holds. And throwing away votes at a time when we will be forced to leave what has become our ancestral home it's not worth taking that risk. And you need to do what's right. And what's right here is to vote for the guy that stood for us. I don't care what anybody says. It's just a fact of life. We have an obligation.
Oh, listen, again, I'll take any one of them. And you're right, Adams has stood up for us, and I remember him going into events and being shouted out by people, by supporters of Hamas, and he says, "Let the hostages go." So he was adamant. This is because of the hostages. So he had it right that this is all on Hamas. Another question for you. They say that Mamdani got a record number of votes during the primary. Okay, 540,000 votes. What I read was there are a little over 5 million eligible voters. I don't know if in polling, I don't know if they ever reached Borough Park or Williamsburg because none of them have smartphones. So realistically speaking, and there's now so much stuff coming out against Mamdani. See, last few months, he's very telegenic and telegenic, and he's savvy. With all this stuff coming out about him, about his father, do you really think that right now these polls really hold? And does having a D next to your name mean what it used to mean? It used to mean you're all but guaranteed. Does it mean that if you're not really a Democrat anymore? Or are most New York City Democrats really socialists? Will they wake up?
I don't think that most New York City Democrats are socialists. I think what will happen is that we're going to see an unusual election where the not the legitimacy so much, but the dominance of the Democratic Party line as a queuing device may change. Historically, if you have the Democratic Party line going into the fall, you have a higher probability of winning. It's almost a lock. And the Republicans tend to be elected, which would be abnormal only when there's a crisis. For Bloomberg, the crisis was 9/11. For Giuliani, the crisis was crime, even though crime had gone down under Dinkins, but it increased during the Koch years. Right. But Dinkins paid the price for the Crown Heights riots. For, let's see, Lindsay, it was the complete, first time around 65, the complete breakdown of city services. And for LaGuardia, it was corruption. So you need something that is beyond imagination for the Republicans to win. And those are the cases. You need something else now this will probably be historic. And there's something else beyond imagination is a Mamdani, 33-year-old, no experience, with a financially challenged city, rescued from de Blasioism by Adams. That's the crisis. Do people want to go back in time? What this really is, too, is a challenge to our political system in significant fashions. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a liar about her background, also born with a silver spoon in her mouth. A tough dame, please give me a break. I know what tough is. She has no clue. And who are challenging the normative behavior of things, which is there is a time to wait and a time to wait into your place. They're not going to wait for their place because they're in a party that is, frankly, falling apart with no future hope unless it can find a consistent message. So you have all this chaos going on at the same time, which is benefiting Mamdani. And that, I think, people will reject chaos.
Good. Listen, Dr. Sheinkopf, it's been an honor to have you. We could talk for hours about this. I would love to have you back as the summer progresses, we get into the fall, and numbers start to tighten more. I'm sure you've got a lot more insight to offer. Again, everything you said, I agree with everything you said pretty much. Actually, everything. We are in trouble. The writing is on the wall. The Democrat Party, even though it's not my party, I never want to see it turn to this. As a Republican, it doesn't make me happy to see what's happening to the Democrats, because when it comes to anti-Semitism, I have no party loyalty.
The danger here, I'd leave you with this thought, is that you need functioning political parties for democracy to work.
Right.
When you have no functioning political parties, democracy doesn't work because you tend to have no means of people participating with a consistent ideology. It sets the stage for dictatorship. We need to have two functioning parties. We don't have them right now. We have parties that are becoming much more like the Democratic Party is a complete mess that stands for nothing, and the Republican Party is now dominated by one figure. Not good news. Whether you like Donald Trump or not, and I'm not blaming him or saying anything negative about him. I'm just saying the political system that allows that kind of dominance is not good news. So we've got to somehow figure out how these parties are going to work again. And that is the danger to democracy.
Let me say, so you just brought up another point about Trump. I remember when he was here in the Bronx last year in the campaign, he drew tremendous numbers.
Correct.
So could it be that he is more popular here than we think? And that if he came in and helped any of the other candidates, that it would be a benefit? I mean, to me, I think that the bashing of Trump kind of has to stop. You
I
know?
think that bashing him is wrong right now.
Yeah.
We don't need that.
Right.
Whatever we see, because he's doing it. Whatever he's doing, he's going to pay the price for or reap the benefit of, as
Right.
any president or public figure does. Could he be more popular than we think? The data on Trump in New York is very bad. Why? Because New York City is a Democratic city. The data on Trump statewide may be false. He may be more popular than we think. Why? Especially with Mamdani. You know, the reality is where you live in Nassau County, if people could figure out, if should he become the mayor, how to put up a wall, they would do it, because the suburbs are going to become, of New York City, are going to become much more Republican, not less, as a function of this, as will the rest of New York. Watch.
Okay, Dr. Sheinkopf, again, I thank you so, so much. And during these, right now we're recording this during the 3 weeks. We've got Tisha B'Av coming up in less than 3 weeks. May all this thing we're going through be redeemed. May we all end up in better times moving forward.
Amen. 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 All the best to you. Thank you for having me on this evening.
Thank you. Bye.